All right, so this morning I woke up at around 5:30 and I knew I wanted to be at the gym by 6:30, but I needed to get some things off my chest. So I started working on a script this morning, and the more I worked on it, the more I realized that I couldn't post that script. It was too personal and involved too many people. And as I always say in my videos, remember, every video is based on a true story, but names and locations are changed to protect the guilty. So, although everything I say on this channel is based on my day to day reality, I can't really go into depth on details, real life details. And that's for the best. Because as I was working with ChatGPT this morning to create that video, it wrote this: your content and observations about corporate power dynamics, managerial dysfunction, and worker struggles align with the concept of shadow leadership. You influence people through your YouTube channel, workplace experiences, and critiques of modern job market. In many ways, you're already a shadow leader, sparking discussions, exposing workplace realities, and encouraging others to see beyond corporate illusions. That video was way too spicy. I got about halfway through it and I'm like, nope, I can't post this. So I scrapped it and went to the gym. Well, about an hour later, I was on the I 17 heading north. The North Phoenix office is about 35 miles from my regular office location, and I was going to go up there to help out another guy that works in my same department, just at another office building. And of course, he was giving me a tour of this building that seemed like it was gigantic. It must have had at least 50 different classrooms. Comparatively to the size of my office, it had to be at least 20 times larger. And he's the one guy that's there 2 times a week. But as we were walking the halls and I was looking at the hundreds of customers that were there, the first order of business was, let's look in the server room. And of course, being who I am, I immediately got on the phone and on Amazon to start fixing things. And that's always been like my reputation, is I like to fix things that have been broken a long time. And today was no exception. When we walked in there, it was very, very, I'm not going to say hot, but it was warm. And when I asked my coworker why he hadn't got this fixed, he just looked at me and said, I don't have time. And I'm like, you don't have time? That's not a good excuse for why you haven't replaced the air conditioning unit, because if you've ever been in a server room, and I don't know how many of you have, is that they require additional cooling beyond the regular normal cooling. So you usually have a refrigeration unit or an AC unit of some sort in that room. And usually they're huge too, they make a lot of noise. Well, his had been broken for about 6 months. And I'm like, this is not acceptable. So I got on the phone with the boss, we got on the phone with the office manager, and we got on the phone with corporate, and a new cooling unit should be arriving tomorrow. And I'm just like, this is what I do everywhere I go. The last time I had a major change is they moved me to the south office, and I was down there for about 6 months. And the first thing I noticed when I got there was these people have no internet. They had what I would have considered dial up internet at an office building that had random outages. And I'm like, I can't work in this building like this. So the first thing we did is we ordered gigabit Ethernet, and we dropped the largest business line that we could into that building. Little did I know that they'd be moving out of that building a year later. But for me, it was a necessary evil. You walk around in your life looking at the things that people ignore when you have my personality, and you want to fix them. And I think it is a really big deal for people who just naturally want to make certain that everything runs correctly. And I think that's one of the main reasons the executives always call me. Even though my boss hates it because it undermines the entire other part of my technology group, they always call me. And I'm just kind of like, okay. So, as I was trying to talk about that in this morning's video, it seemed like it was just no. It was a taboo subject because it's just not something people talk about. Shadow leadership is called shadow leadership for a reason. You're never supposed to come into the light. Someone else is always going to take credit for your work. And being thrown under the bus, I've gotten thrown under the bus by my own people, by my own leadership so many times that I was telling Gen Z, I've just gotten used to being run over. It's just turn the other cheek and get hit by another bus going in the opposite direction, and here it comes again. You just get used to it. Gen Z doesn't understand that. And I think that's one of the main reasons why he's planning on leaving as soon as he can. He's like, he can't work here. He can't work under these conditions. I told him the harder you fight against the corporate culture, the more aggravated you're going to get. There's no changing the way that these people have been running these things. Most of these people have been here for at least 10 years, and they're not going to change. And so when Gen Z gets angry about the way that things are, I just kind of laugh at them. It's like, you have to, you have to get used to being hit by the bus's tires. And he just think he finds it unethical the way that Evil Corp works. And I told him, if you have that mindset, you are never going to be able to hold a job no matter where you go. Because his last job, well, they didn't think very highly of him. And when he tried to put in his 2 weeks to come work for this company, they fired him on the spot. It's like, put in your 2 weeks. We've been waiting to get rid of you. But that's just the way it is. And with that said, even though we're 7.5 minutes in, let's get into our talking points, which are all very short today. The invisible backbone of every workplace. The most competent employees aren't the managers. If you've ever worked anywhere at any job, you'll notice that there's certain people in the organization that really stand out. And I'm going to tell you guys about my experience with this. So, when 5 years before I finished college, I was working for the engineering school. And when I first started working, there was a guy there. He was about, I'm going to say 22 or 23 years old. One of the hardest working, most introverted weirdos that I have ever met in my entire life. The guy reeked of being Lady Kryptonite. He wore the same clothes every day. He spoke cryptically. He had a lot of problems, like severe psychological problems. But he was also a genius. He was. We didn't find out that he was a severe alcoholic until he left. His eccentric behavior at work, we just assumed because he was a genius that he acted this way. It turns out we found out at the end because he apologized to everyone that he had been drinking at work for the last 4 years, but everyone just assumed that his zany behavior was just his personality. But once he got clean, like his personality changed completely. 100% overnight. As soon as he got off the sauce, it was a different guy. He was calm. He was more understanding. It was like his whole personality had changed, had just slowed down. Instead of being up all night, driving and drinking and just being crazy. This is a guy that would drink so much that he would pass out in his car in the parking lot and then walk from his car back into the office. Would work until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning while he was boozing it up. But the second that guy left, The department was on the decline. My boss, at that moment, as soon as that kid graduated, my boss knew his goose was cooked. It was, I think it was around 6 months later that they let him go because he didn't have people that were that were keeping the place running. It showed once the people around him left that were the competent people, the people that weren't managers, once they left, it showed a great incompetence by a person who should never have been in that job. His right hand man, shortly after this guy graduated, left as well. He took a job working in Tucson. That, and then he hired a guy that he should never have hired. I knew from the second that I met this guy that his personality was in direct conflict with that manager. And from day one, his purpose was to remove the manager. And I was just like, holy crap, he was a bad person. Like, the people in the office instantly didn't like him. I'm talking about day one. And I could tell the office girls didn't like him. The employees didn't like him. The end users didn't like him. There was something about him that reeked of a bad person. And the worse the worse that it got in the office, the worse this guy's personality got. But he was setting himself up to be one of these leaders because management loved that hateful behavior. And so inevitably he wouldn't become a manager, he would become a shadow leader because despite all of the bitter dislike from all of the employees, everyone around him didn't like him, including myself. And he was the guy that when I left, he was counting down my days. For the last month that I was at my job, he's like, I can't wait for you to leave Millennial Steam. So every day he'd go to the whiteboard and say, you have 27 days left, 26, 25, 24. He couldn't wait to get rid of all the people around him that questioned his behavior at work. It was a very odd time. I later heard that the manager of that group ended up so after they removed him from being manager, his wife left him. He lost his house, his car. He's probably still living in the basement of his parents' house back east somewhere because he lost everything. He was making a lot of money for a person that was grossly incompetent and was being uh, kept up by the competent people in his department. All right, talking point number two, why management is just a middleman. They often lack the hands on skills to solve real issues. This is something I heard on Friday. So I got a call from one of the office managers in another state. And she said to me, Millennial Steam, I just called your boss because I needed help with a hardware problem inside of the printer. And she says to me, no matter how much time he spent on the phone with me, he couldn't figure it out. He had to call someone else to ask them how to fix the problem. And she's like, it made him look very incompetent. And I was like, well, they often lack hands-on skills, but also worst of all is a lot of these, especially in my industry, the tech industry, these people don't have any soft skills whatsoever. In fact, the office president of my location said to me, was it? I think it was Friday. He comes up to me and he said, "Man, your boss has absolutely no personality. He seems like he's constantly angry. He answers questions with yes, no, and speaks in a way in which you would have more of a conversation, more of a friendly encounter with an evil robot than this person." And I said to him, that's what happens when you spend too much of your life in the military. That's the kind of personality. It's a very cut and dry. Um, and this guy's been after me for what now, 4 or 5 months, maybe longer than that, to try to make certain that I'm not there. But unfortunately, if he's been working every angle that he can, investigating me, listening to my phone calls, going through my messages, talking to people, like he's done everything he can, and he's still stuck. And I'm just like, you know, where there's no smoke, there's no fire, man. And he hates that. Talking point number three: the chaos when the real leaders leave. The second a key worker quits, everything falls apart. So, this is how I know that the senior managers aren't key workers. We are able to run the entire department for months at a time without a senior manager. That's how you know that the person who left possibly got fired. In fact, tomorrow is the 1 year anniversary of the last senior manager that got fired. With him trying to defend his job performance while at the same time no one was buying it, because this is a guy that he went 3 months without showing up in the office. My boss is like, "Oh my god, what am I supposed to do with him?" And I'm like, "You hired him." That's the strange part, is all of these guys, because this is something that my boss's boss says all the time. Why is there so much turnover in Millennial Steam's area? And I'm like, 5 managers in 3 years, 4 Gen Zs in the last 2 years. I mean, the amount of people leaving is incredible. But who's left? Who's still there? Who's the desperation worker that's holding on to his job with just his fingernails on the ledge? That'd be me. So, so going back to the first senior manager, the one that hired me, when they were getting ready to fire him for drinking on the job, it is not uncommon for people who work in the tech industry to have raging substance problems. And that guy had pill problems, he had alcohol problems, he had strange behavioral problems, mainly due to his consumption of alcohol. I mean, this is the guy that the receptionist walked in to ask him about something, and he was passed out drunk under his office. Oh my gosh, that guy! There's just too many stories there. But he honestly believed that he was a key worker, and I just kind of looked at him like, dude, you know, they removed you from nearly all of your job applications for the last 6 months that you were there. His boss was coming in to do his job because he was concerned about his drinking in the workplace. Like we all knew he was doing it. Like there was no way that a man that shook that violently wasn't didn't have the alcohol shakes. But what could you do? And he thought that his position was so valuable at the company that they wouldn't fire him, and that he would be brought in as a senior consultant. Well, they never spoke to him again. And I was just like, some people just don't understand it. And this is a guy that was constantly asking for a promotion to $100,000 a year. And my boss, his boss at the time, they didn't get along either. And that's become a recurring theme, is that everyone that becomes the senior manager doesn't like who their boss is. And I've just learned to live with it. If they want to come after you for stupid reasons, let them. Don't try to fight it. I mean, because the more you fight it, the more they win. So just let it be. The workplace is what it is. It's a crap hole. That's all it really is. So that's where I'm going to end that part of the video. Toxic positivity. Pretending everything is fine doesn't make problems disappear. And that's exactly what happened today. Is that cooling unit for the server room, well, that problem with what to do with the heat, it wasn't going to go away. In fact, it was one of those problems that could cause a domino effect in that room. Problems don't go away just because you choose not to acknowledge them. Our current economy is that exact same thing. Just because you choose to ignore the fact that the economy is a mess, finding a decent job is impossible, and we are in for a roller coaster of a ride in the next 4 years, the America that we currently know and the America that we're going to have in 4 years is going to look incredibly different. The damage that's being created right now and that's going to be done is going to be irreversible. But with that said, that's the end of the video, folks. I hope you guys stayed with me this whole time. I'm not sure when this video is going to air, but sometime in the future. I'll talk to you guys later. And remember, don't forget to subscribe, donate, leave a comment, or just leave a like. Just leave a like. Just do something to help the algorithm, to help me with the good fight against the algorithm that doesn't want me here.